Well, hello everyone. We're very glad to see you here today for our April lecture, which will be given by Richard. This being the 100th anniversary year of the coming together of Winston and Salem, or Salem and Winston deciding on which side of First Street you're on. We wanted to acknowledge that, and Richard has put together a very, very interesting program on that, which you will enjoy. And we're glad to welcome him back too. As you may know, he was ill beginning after the last lunch lecture and has been out sick for a good most of the time since. So we are very glad that he has recovered his strength sufficiently to give this very interesting talk today. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to Richard.
Now, please understand, I've been advised by a couple of wise souls who know my tendency to run on forever that I should remember to kiss. Keep it short, stupid. And so without further ado, consolidation defeated. It is to be regretted that the subject was agitated at all, but the vote shows that Salem, with very few exceptions, has shown a disposition to cast her destiny with her sister town. We hope that this vexed question has now been quieted for all time, and that in future the relations of the two towns may be the most pleasant nature. And with that editorial observation, in its April 24th, 1879 edition, the People's Press, Salem's venerable weekly newspaper, laid to rest the notion of uniting the abutting towns of Salem and Winston into one city to be called Salem. I can sit down now. But welcome to this month's Lunchtime Lecture of the Moravian Music Foundation and Moravian Archives. Our topic for today is Winston-Salem Centennial of a merger in honor of the consolidation of our two towns into one city on May 12, 1913. Or as I have titled it, how the, hyphen came to be. Now, I confess I come to this topic with a certain bias. When I read accounts about the consolidation, newspaper, research papers, books and booklets, I often run across the comment of non-Moravians, well, sort of like, well, this booklet by historian Larry Tice, that it was the quote, decline and fall of Salem. And being a bit sensitive, perhaps, I see that as, well, sort of a slur against, well, the Moravian Church. I'm Moravian. And frankly, without any proof offered to support that claim. So let's pry a little bit into our past and see what we can discover. Let's start with the first opportunity to consolidate, and that takes us back to 1849, the birth of the new town just north of Salem. By 1849, the Stokes County in North Carolina had gained enough population for the state legislature to divide it in half, creating the new Forsyth County. And of course, Forsyth needed a county seat with a courthouse, jail, and so on. And the most obvious spot in the new Forsyth County was Dead Center. But as you know, Dead Center was occupied since 1766 by the Moravian Church and its chief administrative community, Salem. That brought on a bit of negotiating. For its part, the church community of Salem wanted the convenience of a nearby county seat, but did not want the hubbub of court days, public displays of punishment, and the gawkers that such events bring. And for their part, the county commissioners, who happened to be headed by Francis L. Fries, Salem's chief industrialist, who with his woolen and cotton mills, and the Salem Church's most prominent member, they sought to have the county seat as close to the settlement community of Salem as possible, and to buy the land as, well, cheap as possible. Could you give us the land? Was one suggestion, probably by Brother Francis Fries himself. Salem Congregation's Board of Trustees turned a deaf ear to the notion, but did agree to sell 51¼ acres for the new county seat just north of the settled Salem community. The price, $5 an acre. The same that the church was getting for sale of other land in the area. Now you know the story. In 2 auctions of building lots in the new county seat, Forsyth County raised $8,833.50. That was more than enough to pay for the initial $256.25. That was the purchase price that to be paid to a Salem congregation, and plenty of money left over to build a brand new courthouse with change to spare. You notice I have not mentioned the name of the new county seat. That is because that is where irreconcilable differences arose. The initial idea was to give it the most obvious name. What name is that? Nah, at least from Salem's point of view, Salem. But that went over like a lead balloon with the people in the new town, and you can understand why. In 1849, Salem was still a church community, managed and overseen by the Salem Church's boards of elders and trustees and church council. And since Salem was a church community, in order to live there, you had to belong to the Salem Church. That's home Moravian Church today. Lutherans, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, and especially Methodists and Baptists need not apply. Now, that system of church government of Salem lasted another 7 years beyond 1849, when the church members themselves applied to the state legislature to incorporate Salem, and its first civil election was held on January 5th, 1857, with a mayor and town commissioners. No more Board of Trustees, Board of Elders. But back in 1849, all that stuff about church community meant that the notion of calling Forsyth's new county seat Salem was DOA, dead on arrival. As far as the residents of the new town were concerned, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, and especially Methodists and Baptists. And to make sure that they weren't swallowed up in the pervading Moravianism of Salem, the two delegates of Forsyth were paired with two Stokes County delegates in the state legislature, and 3-1 sponsored a law declaring Forsyth's new county was Winston, after Joseph Winston, a native not of Forsyth County, but of Stokes County. And so ended the first attempt at consolidation. Salem tried to have its cake, a county seat right close to hand, and eat it too. The resultant city to be called what our beloved Zinzendorf had named it, Salem. But what it got was a hothead little adjacent village that someday would outstrip Salem in growth, and named for someone perhaps no one, at least in Salem, had ever heard of. That brings us to the second attempt at consolidation, the one we opened with, its obituary pronounced by the People's Press. Frankly, 1879 was about the worst of times to try to bring about bring two disagreeing communities together. Bitterness still lingered from the Civil War. Salem had the hand-wringing, unionist-leading People's Press. Winston had the states' rights championing, fire-eating Western Sentinel newspaper. And only a few years earlier, our governor, W.W. Holden, had tried to stamp out the rising Klan, and for his efforts became the first governor in America to be impeached and removed from office. The whole South had suffered under Reconstruction, which had been lifted only 3 years earlier in 1876. Nonetheless, Salem's and Winston's leaders gave it their best shot in 1879. The two communities would be consolidated into one, and the resultant city would be known as our beloved Salem. Remember that first attempt at consolidation? DOA, as far as Winston voters were concerned. Winston voters concerned, yep. Which give good reason for the People's Press to bury consolidation for all time. You can see Salem's against compared to Winston. Now you tell me who was for consolidation and who was against it. But now there arrived in Salem, only 2 years earlier in 1877, two men who had more than anyone else, with the exception of Frederick William Marshall, Salem's town planner and builder, and perhaps Richard J. Reynolds, a tobacco magnate, shaped the future of Salem and Winston to today. Here is the description of these two remarkable friends taken from our heavyweight history, With Courage for the Future. Now, if you don't have your copy of this thing, I highly recommend you latch on to it. It's filled with gobs of good things. Here's the description. They made an odd couple, this pair of pastors. They were from such different backgrounds, yet Edward Rontaler and Henry A. Brown labored side by side in service to the Lord for more than half a century, and early on formed a bond of friendship that lived on after death. These two men were, quote, these two men were almost as different as day is from night, one biographer wrote. Dr. Brown was short, a Southerner, a Baptist, and a Democrat. Bishop Rontaler was tall, a Northerner, a Moravian, and a Republican. Both came to their pastoral labors within months of each other in 1877. It was, Edward Rontaler recalled, soon after the terrible Reconstruction wrought by the Civil War throughout the South. Edward Rontaler was called to the Moravian Church in Salem, that's home church, in October 1877. H.A. Brown came to the new Baptist Church, First Baptist Church, in Winston that December. The neighboring communities in which they lived were little more than villages. Barely 20 years before, Salem was still a Moravian settlement congregation, where the church's boards had exercised governance since its founding in 1766. Winston had been formed in 1849 as the seat of the new county of Forsyth. Now in 1877, both towns were racked with strife, industrial as well as spiritual. In the aftermath of the war, some of our best businessmen, Bishop Rontaler recalled more than 50 years later, were beginning to consider whether or not to move out of this section into some other environment which might seem to offer more encouragement and better opportunities. There festered two, quote, antagonism and prejudices and religious differences. Yet Edward Rontaler and H.A. Brown held a common vision, and slowly, through sermons and discussions, pastoral visits and leadership, and laboring toward upbuilding, they saw evolve around them a new community, united as one Winston-Salem, growing to become in 1920 the largest city in the state of North Carolina. Now, I don't know who thought up the solution for consolidation. One glance at it, and you have to say it's a no-brainer. Perhaps it was the Reverend Henry Brown, or an enterprising Goslin family member, a newspaper for the Union Republican, who hit upon the idea. But I'm pretty sure we have pinpointed for the first time it has appeared in the Moravian church records. And here I want to thank the archive's premier typist, transcriber, and handwriting decipherer, Grace Robinson. Now, for over the years, Grace has had a ball stuffing almost the entirety of our church records of the late 1800s, early 1900s into the computer. Salem Diary, Board Minutes, Kernersville, Bethania, Friedberg Diaries, anything she can get her hands on. And so with a Microsoft Snap, you can ask our records to show us the first appearance of Winston hyphen. But it isn't Grace's work in which that first appears. The honor belongs to Edward Rontaler. There's Brother Rontaler. And it is in one of his memorabilia. Now, we Moravians are accustomed to memorabilia. They are accounts of a year, highlights, you might say, of events read by the minister at the New Year's Eve service in church. And the first appearance of the Salem Winston in the Moravian church records is Brother Rontaler's memorabilia for 1885. Let's see. Winston, what is that? Salem. 1885. That's just 6 years after 1879's failed second attempt at consolidation. Here is what Brother Rontaler wrote in 1885. The ground so sparsely settled 100 years ago is now occupied by two prosperous and growing towns. Let's see. We notice that there have, nice handwriting to transcribe, right? That they have recently been recognized under their name, Winston-Salem, in a bill introduced into the United States Senate. It's gotten that far. By one of our senators. So there you have it. The key to consolidation, the lowly hyphen. The next election that will come up, Salem will have its way and woo the now bigger Winston to vote yes. It's a classic example of the other corollary to if you can't beat them, in this case, if you can't beat them, invite them to join you. In that memorabilia of 1885, read at Home Moravian Church, the last day of the waning year, Brother Rontaler continued the paragraph. A Chamber of Commerce now amicably and usefully binds the two towns together. Its first labor has been an improvement of the roads leading over the very irregular approaches to our towns, and doubtless other important measures will follow. It is much to be desired that the two towns should thus, under common advice, move together in things which pertain to their joint prosperity. It should be noted that in previous memorabilia, Brother Rontaler focused on Salem to almost a complete exclusion of Winston. Now with 1885 and all subsequent memorabilia to his last in 1930, Brother Rontaler continued to include Winston as part of the twin city of his roundup of memorable events of the year. Now, having hit upon the key, consolidationists set to work getting their message across. In Salem, the means of mass media did not rise until the death of the stubborn old People's Press. in December 1892. Barely 3 months later, Edward Ronteller, now Bishop of the Moravian Church, President of the Provincial Elders Conference governing the Southern Province, got his tool, the Wachovia Moravian, the monthly newspaper of the Moravian Church, Southern Province. In only the third issue of the Wachovia Moravian, third issue, May of 1893, Brother Ronteller schmoozes the local press. Let's see, starting down here and continuing here. We have every reason to be gratified with the cordial utterances in regard to the Wachovia Moravian as far as they have as yet reached us. The two newspapers of Winston-Salem, the Union Republican and the Twin City Daily Sentinel, have most heartily welcomed the newcomer and commented favorably upon the appearance and general style of our first issue. There's nothing like buttering up the local press mouthpieces, especially when both newspapers happen to be Winston newspapers. Shortly, others began jumping on the bandwagon of the hyphen. By June of 1897, advertisements were appearing in the Wachovia Moravian announcing business establishments in Winston-Salem. And then in 1906, with the help of his new editor, John Cluel, Edward Ronteller pulled off his greatest consolidation coup. Here's the March issue for the Wachovia Moravian, 1896. Take a close look. April edition, 1896. Notice any difference? Yes, instead of being published in smallish Salem, from now on, the Wachovia Moravian will be published in the big, bustling Winston-Salem. So now the time was right for the great consolidation question, round 3. If you don't mind, there's our little pixie, Edward Ronteller, quietly lobbying. If you don't mind, let's let Home Church's diary give the blow-by-blow as written by this man. You know him, J. Kenneth Fall, successor to Edward Ronteller as pastor of Home Moravian Church. And here is what was in the Salem or Home Church diary, 1913. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, March 17th, 18th, 19th, 1913. The evening services, this was Holy Week, were well attended. On Tuesday, that's March 18th, the citizens of the two cities of Winston and Salem, by very substantial majorities, voted to consolidate the two municipalities on May 1st, 1913. The step has long been desirable and promises to result in great good for everybody concerned. It is the third time the effort has been made, and everyone rejoices that there was such a decided majority. Salem's majority vote was 261 and Winston's 480. Now, we don't have to take to heart Brother Fowles' numbers, take that as the gospel. Here are the results as reported by historians, including Larry Tice. You can see from our we have some naysayers in Salem, but still the majority, 63%. Winston was won over completely to Salem's point of view. Monday, May 12th, 1913, from the Salem Diary. This day, one of importance to the community as the consolidation of the two communities became effective today. There is no longer a Salem, a Winston and a Salem, but Winston-Salem. And may the Lord lay his blessing upon this united work of the two municipalities, which have now come into this close union of interests. 3 members of the Board of Aldermen are members of the home church. Brother H.F. Schaffner, F.A. Fogel, and M.C. Kane. Let's have Edward Rontaler conclude this little account, of the little hyphen and what it did. In the June 1913, Wachovia Moravian, a month after the consolidation became a reality, Brother Rontaler wrote, on the evening of Monday, May 12th, the two corporations of Winston and Salem quietly became one. And in the first meeting of the newly elected aldermen, the united city of Winston-Salem became an accomplished fact. We learned that the friendly spirit of cooperation far exceeds the most sanguine expectations. A special labor is being bestowed upon the school union of the two sections of the new city. A very active and able board of education has been busy night after night in perfecting this union. It was a pleasing sign of the prevailing spirit that the Moravian Church in Salem has granted its boys' school building for several years to the city's school system free of rent. So finally, Winston got something free from the Salem Church. And after 64 years, on the third attempt at consolidation, Salem got its cake and ate it too. It had the county seat right close to hand, and now a city bearing the name Salem. Granted, Salem shares the top billing, but let's be thankful the little hyphen did and still does all that work. Now, the best of us old-time Moravians was yet to come. A quarter century after consolidation of Salem and Winston into the largest city in North Carolina and largest industrial center from between Baltimore and New Orleans, as I recall Bill Hinman once said, telling me, a movement was begun under this guy's tutelage. You know him, right, Graham? Douglas L. Wright, that eventually restored back to us the little church settlement that was Salem. But that's a story for another occasion. For now, we can be thankful. We can celebrate the Centennial of the power of the hyphen. Thank you very much. Now, coming up next month, we have on May 9th, a very sad lunchtime lecture, the day Zinzendorf died. And that is May 9th. Thank you all very much.